Hi guys, this is going to be going over a little bit of an elaboration on how to tune your drones. Drone tuning is something that a lot of us struggle with, even professionals. If we're competing and we're outside and there are a lot of platforms around us, sometimes within several feet, we can have a lot of trouble with figuring out how to tune our drones, especially the bass. The bass is a pain in the butt, isn't it? A lot of us can agree with that. So I see a lot of people going and tuning, shutting off the bass, which is not a problem, and then tuning these two drones, the two tenors. Now, while there's nothing wrong with that, it's a little time consuming, but sometimes we are not quite sure about how to deal with it any other way. So when I tune my drones, I tap off and close the top of the middle tenor, and then I tune the outside tenor to my low A, assuming that the low A is and the chanter is in tune and at the right pitch that we're looking for. And then once I got the low A in, I actually get the bass in. Now, assuming that your high A and your low A are tuned at the same pitch, you should learn how to identify when the drones are actually in tune with the high A. And then if they're in tune with the high A, then it should be in tune with the low A as well. But that's a little bit trickier. So first, I actually haven't played these at all today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow up and I'm going to tune the low A to the outside tenor, or the other way around actually. And then I'm gonna throw it out of tune just a little bit so that you can hear the difference between being in tune and being slightly out of tune. Sometimes there's a very tiny margin, and that could be where it gets a little bit tricky to figure out how far off you are. So just listen. So you can hear that is not quite in tune, right? It sounds a little bit on the sour side to me. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to make very little interval changes here with the outside tenor. That once I do this, I'm going to stop and then I'm going to ask you how close you think it is. So I made a very slight change to the outside tenor. I brought it down so that it can actually be a little bit closer. So when I turn the drone up or down, it's going to change the pitch. So how much do we actually need to turn it in order to change the pitch and bring it closer to the to bringing it into in tune with the chanter, if I can talk. So I'm going to blow up again, do the same thing, and this time I'm going to turn it down a little bit again and blow up, and then hopefully you could hear a little bit of change. So listen very carefully. So hopefully you can hear the difference from when I brought it up to when I brought it down. Can you hear the difference in the tone of the low A? When I brought it up here, it sounded more sour, and then when I started to bring it down, it started to sound a little bit crisper. So I'll bring it down even more and listen to the change. hopefully you could hear that when I brought it down even more, it started to go the other way. It actually sounded pretty good when I had it a little higher up. So that means I went too far. You can go too far. Okay, if it's out of tune up here and you bring it down, that doesn't mean that you're gonna just hit the bottom of the bed, and it's going to be fine. And you can't go any farther unless you dig through the floor, which please don't. When you start going a little farther down, it's going to be a little bit. It can be a little bit more difficult to decide whether or not you need to go lower or you need to go up. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, but this is where practice and repetition comes in. You need to be listening proactively and with as little ambient noise as possible, which can be a little bit tricky, especially if you're competing outside. Like, come on, that's just a little bit pain in the butt, isn't it? So listen very carefully to the outside tenor because this is your starting bass, okay? A lot of people will go for this, and there's not a problem with that, but going for the outside tenor is where we tune our high A and our low A too, right? Like I said earlier. So once you get this in tune, getting the bass or the outside tenor in tune is not nearly as difficult. In fact, it's probably easier to get this thing in tune with this than it is to get the bass in tune with this, isn't it? So once we get this in tune with this, once we get rid of all the waving, or as little waving as possible, then we can look at getting this into tune as well. So let me do it one more time. I'm going to get this in tune, so I'll point up to where I need to go as well, and then I want you to listen to it one side. That way, hopefully I'll have it in tune, and then I'll get the bass drone in tune. So now you can hear the difference between playing the low A when the drone was farther down compared to where I put it up. You hear the difference? It sounded a lot more crisper. It didn't sound quite as sour. So another way to do this, like I said earlier, is to go from the high A. Now that gets a little bit more trickier because it's easier to tell when the low A is in tune with the outside tenor than it is to tell when the high A is in tune. But again, it takes repetition. It takes practice and figuring out what it sounds like when you have the high A in tune with the outside tenor when it's in tune with the low A. So a way to do this is to keep listening to the high A like I was earlier, and when the low A is in tune, play the high A for a few seconds. Train your ear to hear to identify how that chanter sounds on the low A and the high A when that drone is in tune with the chanter, with the low A and the high A, okay? That's going to save you a lot of time. And no, it's not easy. It takes time, okay? If it takes you a while, keep going at it. You're eventually going to figure out what the high A and the low A should sound like when they're both in tune with the outside tenor. Now let's get the outside tenor going. This one should be a little bit easier, but sometimes it's not. So let's hear what it sounds like. So I hope that you could hear how much of a difference it made when I started bringing this up at the same time. I heard that there was a little bit of waves that started going in, yin, yin. And when I brought it down, they started going yin, 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 yin. The yin, 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 yin. That does sound funny, doesn't it? The yin, 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 yin. That is what you don't want. That means that the drone is out of tune, okay? A lot of you may be familiar with this, and others of you may not be. And if you're not familiar with it, that's fine. That's why we're doing this, okay? So when I started to bring this up, you could hear that the waves started to go down and eventually they were eliminated. That's what you want. That's what tells you that the drones are in tune. It's a beautiful thing to listen to when they are in tune. And sometimes when a bagpipe is not in tune, the drones may actually be in tune with each other. But getting them in tune with this thing, that's the trick. And that's what takes time. And like I said earlier, if the chanter is in tune at the octave that you want, and you get the low A and the high A in tune with the outside tenor, and then you get all these things in tune, it makes for a beautiful sound, doesn't it? It sounds gorgeous. So now that we have the outside tenor, the inside tenor, let's get the bass in tune. This is where it gets a little bit tricky as well, right? So I hope you could hear that when I started to lower this thing down, it started to go nee, 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 and when I lowered it down more, it went nee, 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 nee. So again, just like with this one and that one, it told me that the drones are starting to go out of tune with this. Okay, this is starting to go out of tune with these, and that's not what we want. We want it to be in tune with these two. And if your bagpipe doesn't sound the greatest, well, you just need to, well, it's just a matter of learning how to make it sound better, and sometimes that's not always the easiest thing. Trust me, I know. It is not easy, especially when you don't have somebody really close to you on a regular basis who is able to show you how to do this. And this is part of why I make these videos, is so that you can learn from somebody who's got some experience like myself, who can explain to you how to do it, okay? So let's try to get this bass in tune with the outside tenors, which is getting closer, but we have a little bit more to go. Now, we're not done yet. I'm going to bring them down so you can hear the difference from being in tune to being out of tune. So now it's out of tune. Let me bring them back up to where they are in tune. Listen. So now that the bass is in tune, I threw the inside tenor out of tune. You can hear that this one's starting to wave, right? I haven't touched this one. This one's in tune with this one. This one is now not in tune with either out of these, okay? These two could be out of tune, so that's why it's easier to get this one in tune with this. This one's in tune with the low A and the high A. This one's in tune with this one. Now we got to get this one back in tune with this one, okay? You can't get, it's hard to get these two in tune with this if this one is not in tune, honestly. That's why so many of us, including myself, tune this one to the low A and the high A, and then we get the rest of them, okay? It is possible to tune all of these at the same time, one after the other, bing, bing, bong. But it takes time and it's a little bit harder. Trust me, and especially if there's a lot of ambient noise, it is tough. It is very, very tough. When I played a competition in Ontario a year or so ago, I remember trying to play an MSR and my bass was so hard to hear, I don't think I quite got it in tune. And the judges' comments were bang on. They were absolutely correct. The drones were not quite in tune. They did not stay in tune. I got them pretty close, but they weren't close enough to stay in tune. And the pipes just weren't quite on that day. And sometimes that happens too. But that's just an example of how finicky bagpipes can be when we're trying to tune the darn things and get them to stay in tune. And that takes a little bit of practice, or a lot of practice sometimes, which is fine too. So let's get the outside tenor, or inside tenor rather, back into tune. So now I got the inside tenor in tune with these ones. Now let's get the outside tenor back into tune, because now I just threw it out. So now think about this. These two are in tune with each other. They're in tune with the low A, so that helps us out. This one is out of tune with the low A, so we'll be able to hear it a little bit easier. Again, we're tuning this one to the low A and the high A, right? So let's get this one back into tune. Listen to the waves. So you can hear how I got this one going, and then I got these two in at the same time as well. So now all of them are working together to create a nice, even tuned sound. So this is a bit of an extended video today, elaborating on how bagpipe drones need to be tuned all together. Now, quite often, I find that sometimes when we try to learn how to tune drones, it's really fast. But that's because, especially with pipers who have learned how to do it really quickly, we forget that we need to do it slower. Now that's not always the case. Sometimes, especially when we're playing pibroch and stuff, where the tune is slower and it requires more articulate finger work, especially with Kernlua and so forth, we need to make sure that those drones are locked in. And that takes a long time. Have you ever heard of the concept of having more tuning time in a competitive setting for pibroch than we do for like light music, like MSRs and jakes? Quite often, tuning time for those are 5 minutes. Sometimes even a little bit longer. Sometimes they're 6 minutes, but very rarely. Most of the time, they're 5 minutes, so that you can get those things locked in, because pibrochs take a lot more time than MSRs and hornpipes and jakes. For light music, like MSRs and things, the tuning time for that is 3 minutes and shorter. The shorter it is, the better. But those sets don't take anywhere near as much time as pibrochs do. Sometimes a pibroch could take a half hour, right? Have you ever heard that? That's insane. But those pibrochs are very long sometimes, and sometimes they're as short as 5 to 10 minutes. So that's where you need to get the drones in tune. So I hope that this video is helpful for you today. If you liked it, give it a like. So hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. We're doing very, very well. We're almost at 1,400 subscribers. So let's keep going, guys. I appreciate your time. I enjoy doing these things for you. I hope you enjoy them and like them. And I'll see you in the next one.